We continue now at the top of Daf Memhei Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 45a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah was listing cases where the person takes a Shevuot and then he collects, and these are all Shevuos Midrabanan. And the last one the Mishnah mentioned was, let's say the other person is Chashad al Shevuot. He's not able to take a Shevuot because he's suspect, and so therefore instead of the defendant taking the Shevuot, now the person claiming the money takes the Shevuot in order to collect. And the Mishnah continues, how exactly does that work? Achas Shevuos ha'edus, whether we're talking about Shevuos ha'edus, we'll see Rashi in a moment. V'achas Shevuos ha'pikadon, whether we're talking about Shevuos ha'pikadon. V'afilu Shevuos shav, and even Shevuos shav. Haya echad mehen misachik bekuvya, let's say one of them rolls dice, he's a gambler, that's why he's not able to take a Shevuot. U'malve bribis, or let's say he lends for interest. U'mafricha yonim, or let's say he races, he flies the pigeons. Mesochrei Shevuos, or let's say he does business with the produce of Shevuos. So all of these individuals can take a Shevuot. So shekenegdo nishba v'noto. So then the other person, the other party, is going to take the Shevuot in order to collect. And Rashi explains, Achas Shevuos ha'edus bein shenechshad al Shevuos ha'edus, whether, let's say, he was suspect on a Shevuos ha'edus case, bein shenechshad al Shevuos ha'pikadon, or maybe he was suspect with regards to Shevuos ha'pikadon, shekafar, he denied a certain deposit, benishba al shekron, he took a false oath, now he's suspect because he took a false oath, that could be by Shevuos ha'edus or Shevuos ha'pikadon, v'afilo nechshad al Shevuos shav, now even if he was suspect just taking an oath in vain, so it wasn't a false oath, it was just in vain, shehu ra'la shamayim oleh, v'lo that's something that he did bad to heaven, so to speak, but not to people. Nevertheless, that's enough to be disqualified from taking a Shevuot. And the Mishnah continues, Hayushneyan chashudin, let's say both of them are suspect, both parties are suspect in terms of taking a Shevuot. Chazra hashvuot lemekoma, so then the Shevuot goes back to its place. Rashi says, Chazra shvuot lemekoma, begemara mefarish la, the Gemara will explain what exactly that means. Divrei Rabbi Yossi, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir says in such a case, Yachloku, they divide it, they split the amount of money that is being disputed. And the Mishnah continues, V'achenvani al pinkaso, the storekeeper with his ledger, that is another case, again in which the person takes a Shevuot in order to collect. And the Mishnah says, Ketzad, how so? What exactly is the case? And the Mishnah says, Lo sheyomar lo, the case is not where he says to him, Kasav al pinkasi shato chayev li masayim zuz, that it's written on my ledger that you owe me 200 zuz. That is not the case. Ella, rather, the case is as follows. Omer lo, he says to him, Tain livni sasayim chitin, he says, give to my son 2 saw of wheat. Or he says, let's say it's an employer, Tain lepoali selamos, give to my workers a sell of money. And who omer nasati? And the storekeeper says, I gave what you told me to give, so you owe me. Vehein omer, however, they say, let's say, for example, the workers, they say, lo natalna, we didn't take anything, we never received. And so now they want their money, and the storekeeper also wants the money. And so the Mishnah says, Hu nishba v'notel, he takes an oath and he's able to collect, meaning the storekeeper. V'hei nishbain v'notlin, and they also take an oath and they're able to collect. But the Mishnah continues, Amar Ben Nanas says, Keitzad elu ve'elu boin lidei Shevuos shav. How can it be that it's going to end up if they both take a Shevuot? So one of them is taking a false Shevuot. You're going to have a false oath over here. And so you can't say that they both take a Shevuot, because again, either you have a situation where the storekeeper did pay them or he didn't pay them. If the storekeeper is taking the Shevuot that he paid them, so then they got paid and they're taking a Shevuot they didn't receive. So somebody over here is lying. And so therefore Ben Nanas says, Elahu notel shalo b'Shevuot, rather he collects without an oath. Ve'hei notlin shalo b'Shevuot. And they also take without an oath. There's no oath that is taken in this case. And the Mishnah continues with another case with the storekeeper. Amar lechenvani, let's say he says to the storekeeper, Tenli b'dinar peiros, give me produce valued at a dinar. V'nasan lo, and so he gives him produce, and now the person owes him a dinar. Amar lo, so he says to him, Tenli oso dinar. The storekeeper says to the person, give me that dinar. That's what he says to the customer. Amar lo, the customer says to him, Nesativ lach, or nesatu b'unpali, I actually already paid you. I gave you the dinar and I put it in your wallet. And so in this case, Yishava balabayas shenasan lo es hadinar. So the balabayas, the customer, he should take a shvu. He takes an oath that he in fact paid him the dinar. Amar lo, if he says to him, Tainli asaperos, let's say the customer says, give me the produce. Amar lo, nesatim lach, and so then the storekeeper says, I gave them to you. V'olachtim l'soch beisach, and you already took it to your house. I already gave you the produce. So in this case, says the Mishnah, Yishava chenvani, so then the storekeeper should swear that he gave the peiros. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol sha'peiros biyadu, whoever has the produce, yadu al helyona, he has the upper hand in this case. And Rashi explains, Kol sha'peros biyado yado ala tachtona. Again, Rabbi Yehuda says that whoever has the produce, he has the upper hand. Which case is Rabbi Yehuda arguing on? Says Rashi, Aresha Polig. Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the case in the Resha, the first case. The first case, again, is a situation where the storekeeper is asking for his money. To katani yishava balabayis shenasan lo es hadinur. So the Tanna Kama said that the balabayis swears that he paid the money, and then he doesn't have to pay the money. V'yasar Rabbi Yehuda l'meimer, but then Rabbi Yehuda comes and says, Ein sarach shvua. Actually, the customer doesn't even need to take a shvua in this case. She'ein derech envoni hamocher shelo b'hakafa liten es haperos hat sheikavel hasadinur, because it's not normal for a storekeeper who's selling that he's going to give the produce before he actually receives the dinar. It is more likely that he received the money first and then gave the produce, and therefore we actually believe the customer that he paid the money. And the Mishnah continues, Amar l'shalchani, let's say a person says to a money changer, Tainli b'dinar mos, I'll give you a dinar, and you should give me change, give me copper coins. V'nasan lo, and he gives it to him. Amar lo, and he says to him, Tainli as dinar, he says, I gave you the change, give me the dinar. Amar lo, and then the person says, Nasati l'cha, I actually already gave you the dinar, unasato bunpuli, and again it was placed inside the wallet. So in this case, Yishava balabayis, so the balabayis should take an oath, he should take a shvua that he in fact gave the dinar. Nasan lo as dinar, let's say he gave the dinar, and Amar lo, and then he says to him, Tainli as amos, give me my change, give me the copper coins. Amar lo, and the money changer says to him, Nasatam lach, I gave that to you, v'shlachta l'toch kischa, and you put it into your wallet. So then Yishava shalchani, so then the money changer, he should take a shvua that he gave the money. And again, Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein derech shalchani litein isur at sheyitol dinar. It's not the way of a shalchani to give the isur until he actually takes the dinar. And so therefore, again, in that first case, we are going to assume that the shalchani actually did receive the dinar, and the customer doesn't even need to take a shvua in that case. And the Mishnah continues, Kashem sha'amru, just like they say, hapogemes ksubas, if a woman blemishes, so to speak, her ksuba, what that means is that she acknowledges that it was partially paid, and now she wants to collect the rest of the ksuba. So in that case, lo tipara ela b'shvua, she can only collect with an oath. V'yedechon mi'ida shiprua, also a similar case, let's say one witness testifies it's already been paid, the halach is the same, lo tipara ela b'shvua, she can only collect with a shvua. Or minachasim mishubadim, or minichse yisomim, let's say she's collecting from liened property or from property of orphans, lo tipara ela b'shvua, she can only collect with a shvua. V'hanefras shelo b'fanav, and if she's collecting from the husband's property and it's not in front of him, lo tipara ela b'shvua, she can only collect with a shvua. So just like we say in all of those cases, she has to take a shvua. V'chein hayisomim, similarly it's true by orphans, lo yiparu ela b'shvua, they can only collect with a shvua. And Rashi explains, Keshem sha'amru, Mishnah hi b'Meseches ksuba. It says again in the Mishnah, just like we say, where do we say that? This is a Mishnah, Meseches ksuba. B'motzia shtar ksuba, so moda shekibla miksasa. The case is, let's say she takes out her shtar, but then she admits that it was partially paid. V'nimtza she'ein lismoch al shtar ksubasa. So it comes out that we can't really rely on the shtar because it was already partially paid. V'imtoin baldin eskab lakula. Let's say, for example, the husband would now say, no, actually, she's received everything. So lo tipar ela b'shvua, the halach over there is that she only collects with a shvua. Then the Mishnah listed a bunch of other cases where she takes a shvua. Kulu akashem kaimi. This is all one big sentence. It's all going on kashem. Just like in all these cases, she collects with a shvua, so too by the asomim. That's the idea over here. Kulu akashem kaimi. Kashem shein echor me'elu nifra ela b'shvua. Just like in all of these cases, the collection is done with a shvua. Kach hayisomin lo yiparu. So too by orphans, they don't collect. They have to take a shvua. They can only collect with a shvua. Ufa Gemara muki b'yasomim min hayasomim. We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say we're talking specifically when orphans are collecting from other orphans. And Rashi continues, Nefras shelo b'fanav. Again, the Mishnah mentioned the case where she's collecting not in front of him. That means to say, Shashalach get mi medinas hayam. Let's say he's overseas and he sent the get from over there. So then again, that would be a case of Nefras shelo b'fanav, and she has to take a shvua. And the Mishnah continues in regards to orphans who are collecting a debt that's owed to their father. So they take a shvua, they take an oath, Shelo pakadnu abba, that father did not instruct us not to collect this debt, or Velo amar lanu abba, or that father did not tell us that this might have been already paid, or Shalom Matzinu Ben Shtaros of Shalaba Shashtar Zepura. We didn't find among all the documents of our father that there was a receipt that this document was already paid. That's the kind of shvua that the orphans have to take. And the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says, Afilu nolad haben la'achar misa sa'av, even if the son was born after the death of the father, harezen nishba v'notel, he takes a shvua in order to collect. And Rashi explains, Shelo pakadnu ava, that father did not instruct us, b'shas misa, at the time of his death, again, not to collect this debt. And sheshtar ze parua, then it says that this document was paid. It means to say that father didn't tell us that it was paid. Shelo amar lanu kodem lachen, that he didn't tell us before that, again, that this was paid off. And shelo matzanu ben shtarosav, and we didn't find among his documents shover, a receipt, al shtar ze, on the shtar that says that it was paid. And finally, Rashi says, hareza nishba, again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says, even if the son was born after the death of the father, he takes a shvuah, shalom matzah shover, that he didn't find the receipt, meaning to say again that this was not paid. And the Mishnah continues, Amar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Im yesh edim sha'amar ha'av b'shas misaso. If there are witnesses that the father said at the time of his death, shtar ze eino parua, that this document in fact was not paid, so then who knows shalo b'shvuah? So then the orphan is able to collect even without a shvuah, even without an oath. And the Mishnah continues, Ve'elu nishboin shalo b'tain. In the following cases, they can take an oath even without a claim. And the cases are as follows: Hashutfin, let's say you have partners; V'harisin, or let's say sharecroppers; V'hapitropin, or you have caretakers; V'ha'isha hanoses v'hanosenes b'soch habayis, or let's say you have a woman who's taking care of the property; Uven habayis, or you have somebody who's part of the household, again, taking care of the property. The idea in all of these cases is you have people that are handling other people's property. So Amar Lo, he says to him, Ma to ta'aneni ritzoni shetish bali chayev. Let's say he says, what are you claiming against me? And he just says, I want you to take a shvuah, meaning to say, I want you to take a shvuah that you haven't mishandled any of my property. So chayev, he'd be obligated to take a shvuah in that case. But says the Mishnah, cholko hashutfin v'harisin, once the partners, let's say, they divide up the property, they're no longer partners, or the same with the sharecroppers, so at that point in time, ein yachol hashbio. At that point in time, he can't simply make him take a shvuah that you didn't mishandle the property, because again, at that point in time, they're no longer partners. However, niskalgel lo shvuah mimakom acher, let's say already there's a shvuah that he can make him take from some other case, then we have the concept of gilgul shvuah, megalgalin all of us akol. Then we can do gilgul shvuah and say, while you're taking that shvuah from me, take a shvuah as well, that you didn't mishandle any of the property while it was under your care. And the Mishnah concludes, V'hashvias mishametes es hashvuah. Shvias, the Shemitah year, just like it cancels a loan, it would also cancel an obligation to take a shvuah in the same fashion. And the Gemara says, again, the Mishnah said, Kol hanishboin shebetorah nishboin v'lo mishalem. In all the cases of d'oraisa shvuahs, when the Torah says to take a shvuah, the person is always taking the shvuah in order not to pay. The Gemara says, Menolim, from where do we know that? Diamar krotz, because the pasuk says, V'lokach ba'olav v'lo yeshalim, the owner will take and not pay. It means to say, Misha olav l'shalim lo shvuah, the one that's supposed to be paying, he's the one that takes the shvuah in order to get out of paying. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ve'elu nishboin v'nol. In the following cases, these are again the Rabbanan shvuahs, they take the shvuah in order to collect. The Gemara says, Ma'ishna sochir, the takinu le Rabbanan de mishtaba v'shakel. Why is it by a sochir, by a hired worker, that the Rabbanan institute that he should take the oath in order to collect? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, halachos gedolos shanukan. There are great halachos that are taught over here. The Gemara asks, halachos, what do you mean halachos? Halachos usually means it's halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Hani hilchos aninu, are these halacha l'Moshe Misinai? These are the Rabbanans. And so the Gemara instead says, Ela Ema, rather what it means to say is as follows. Takonos gedolos shanukan. There are great takonos from the Chachamim that we find over here. The Gemara says, gedolos, you're saying that they're great takonos, mechlal dika ketanos. That implies that there are such a thing as small takonos, so that can't be as well. And so the Gemara continues and says, Elo Amar of Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Rather, if Nachman says that Shmuel says, takonos kavuos shanukan. What we have learned over here is takonos kavuos, fixed takonos. And the idea is, akrua rabbanan l'shvuah mi balabayis. The Rabbanan uprooted the shvuah from the balabayis, v'shadyu asachar, and instead they put the shvuah on the hired worker. He's the one that should take the shvuah in order to collect. And the reason is, mishum kedei chayev. The reason is in order for his livelihood. The Gemara says, one second, mishum kedei chayev, the sacher, just for the livelihood of the hired worker, konsinan leila balabayis, we're going to fine the balabayis because the balabayis here loses out. Now we're allowing the worker in a dispute whether the worker was paid. The worker's allowed to be the one to take the shvuah and collect. Why should we do that? The Gemara says, no, balabayis gufei nichole. The balabayis actually prefers that the sachir, the hired worker, be allowed to take the shvuah. He prefers the mishtaba sachir v'shakel. He wants the hired worker to be able to swear in order to collect his wages. Ki hechi disgarun lepol, and because then other workers will be willing to work for him. If workers hear that he doesn't pay his workers, they're not going to want to work for him. So that's why he would actually prefer that we allow the workers to take this shvuah in order to collect collect when there's a dispute. But the Gemara continues, Adrab, on the contrary, you can make the exact opposite argument. Maybe the hired worker prefers that the balabayis should be allowed to take a shvuah and not have to pay, because now the balabayis is going to want to hire him. He's going to want to hire these workers if he understands that those are the terms. But the Gemara says, no, balabayis al karche agar, it's not true, because the balabayis, the owner, he's going to have to hire workers. He can't get out of hiring workers. We don't need to encourage him with these kind of terms, and therefore, again, that's why we do it. We allow the sacher to be the one to take the oath in order to collect. But the Gemara says the other way is true also. Sacher nami al karche miskar, isn't it true that when it comes to a hired worker as well, doesn't he need to be hired? He needs to be hired in order to support himself, so why do we need to make terms that encourage the workers that they're going to be hired? And so the Gemara says, Ella rather, balabayis tard b'po'alafu. The real reason why we say that the sacher, the hired worker, is the one who should take the shvuah in order to collect is because the balabayis is very busy with his workers. And so therefore he might not remember exactly what happened, therefore he's not the one to take the shvuah. They should take the shvuah that they weren't paid in order to be paid. But the Gemara says, well, if that's true, we should give the worker the money even without making him take a shvuah. If we think that the balabayis is so busy he doesn't remember whether he paid them or not, so then he really owes the money. But the Gemara says to that, no, kadei lahafis daitu shel balabayis. This appeases the mind of the balabayis when he sees that the workers are taking the shvuah, so then he already trusts that maybe he didn't pay them, and he's willing to pay them. But the Gemara continues and asks, well, why don't we just institute that when he pays the workers, he should do it in front of witnesses? That way we know that they got paid. The Gemara says, mil, so that's too burdensome to have to find witnesses every time you pay. And the Gemara asks, well, another solution would be, why not let him pay them before they actually do the work? That's the time when he's not so busy. The Gemara says to that, Shnei and Rotzen ba'akafa, no, they both really want it this way, meaning the workers and the balabayis want it that the worker should be paid after the work is done. Rashi explains, the Chacham should institute that a person should never pay wages to work without witnesses. That way we won't come to a situation of a dispute where we have to have an oath. And then the Gemara asks, why not pay him from the outset? Let the Rabbanan institute that a person should pay his workers their wages in the morning, before they even start to work. That way, when the person claims the money in the evening, he won't be able to collect. You don't have to have any shvuah. And the Gemara said to that, they both want the work to be done on credit, meaning to say that you pay after the work is done. Sometimes the Baal Habayis doesn't have the money in the morning. And also the Poel, he wants to delay payment. That's why that way he has the money. He's afraid otherwise if he gets paid early, he's going to end up spending that money. He won't have that money for his needs. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Memhei Amud Beis.